All right, so let's start off with a little bit of news for this time of year. It's a little bit slow this time of year, but there are a couple of things worth sharing. Excuse me. So WordPress news and events. So recently, in case you missed it, November 7th, a new WordPress version got released, WordPress 6.4, named Shirley, another jazz singer. And actually, as a matter of fact, I believe 6.4.1 got released also very recently, another point release to it. So we're not going to spend, we've talked about this a little bit over the past couple of meetups of what was in this. In fact, tonight, during my demo at least, I'm going to be using that 2024 default theme. So you'll get a little sneak preview of it. But we didn't feel like it was worth spending an entire meetup diving into this release. But there is a lot of content in it, so I don't want to diminish it. So it has over 100 performance-related updates. There's some updates to the command palette, which we may or may not see today. Peter will probably be touching upon the lightbox functionality that's part of images, so that's a cool thing. There's some again, little nice enhancements, quality of life things like the list view. Hopefully we'll take a look at that as well too, some enhancements to that. So again, that's if you have a site that gets automatically updated, this probably has happened already and you may not even noticed it. As far as I've heard, it seems like it's gone well. I know they put out a point release, but they generally do that after a major release. And this is the last one of this year, 6.4, as far as I'm aware. So again, that happened since we last met. And what's coming up December 11th, maybe before we have our December meetup, most likely, is State of the Word. So State of the Word 2023 is coming up. It's going to be live in Madrid, Spain, but you can watch it on the WordPress YouTube channel. So if you go just search, for WordPress or youtube.com/WordPress. If you've never seen one of these, I always tend to watch it, not necessarily live. I have, when it's streaming, but at least catch up on it afterwards. So I always find it to be kind of a fascinating take. It's Matt Mullenweg from the WordPress project lead, and one of the co-founders, I should say. And it's kind of generally it's a good way to understand what's been going on with WordPress and where WordPress is going in the future. And as we talked before, if you watched some of our past meetups or you attended them, there is this plan of different phases of WordPress and the growth of WordPress. So, we're kind of ending a phase which brought about things like Gutenberg and full site editor. And this next phase about collaboration, et cetera, is really just starting. So hopefully, I assume there's be quite a bit of discussion of that in the State of the Word. So feel free to watch it either live. There's a bunch of watch parties that got set up. Some got set up unintentionally for some WordPress meetup groups. But anyway, I think it's definitely worth checking out either live or afterwards on the YouTube channel. So that's December 11th. And then tool or tip spotlight. I don't know if you got something, Peter, to share.
I do. Yeah. Let me share my screen here. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So my tool and tip is something that Ray already brought up, which is our website. If you haven't seen it or gone to hartfordwp.com, we're going to kind of keep evolving this. And while our presentations are here, like this is tonight's presentation, you could even just follow along as you go. And then in previous ones where we've added as best we can, right? So kind of capturing these, but any links that we're mentioning and things like that. So that gets recorded. But I'll show you two other areas that you might not have seen. One is a suggested topic form. So the idea is just if you want a way other than even on Meetup or whatever, just to share, hey, there's a topic that we're interested in. We just have right on the top. You can always just go in and just suggest a topic. It's a simple form. So that's one thing to use to kind of keep this group, on top of some of the things that you all might be looking for. But here's something. Here's a tool and tip that I hope to grow out, which is a snippets area. Under snippets, what we've got is some things. Now these are generated by ChatGPT. Although if I find any others that are out there, we find any others that are out there that are kind of handy. This is I want to kind of gather these things, and for anyone that's interested, I can show you the back end of this. Is a code mirror block that we're dropping the code in here. But right now I've got I can maybe after our presentation I can go in and show what these specific things do. But I've got 3 snippets out there that I made with the help of ChatGPT. I'm not a coder. I'm apparently pretty good at prompting the artificial intelligence that we have here. And so the snippets right now are there's one which was manage patterns in the appearance admin in classic themes. This we did a while back, where block themes have a way that you can manage all your patterns, but if you're using a classic theme, Cadence, Generate, Press, Blocksy, Astra, and so on. I always mention those 4 because those are 4 that I recommend. This will add under your appearance menu a way that you can manage the patterns that you have created. It's just so you can see it's not a lot of code, but it's a little snippet that adds that. I've got one called add last updated columns to plugins list. This is something I wanted to look and say, I want to highlight what plugins haven't been updated in more than a certain amount of time, in this case 6 months. So I can show you that, but it's just some code that adds a column that says last updated, and if it's over than 6 months, you can see it'll the date gets listed and put it in red. And then this other one was just enhancing that media library test. I wanted a thumbnail that was larger, the right proportion, so I could see it all, and listed the alt text in there. And there's other plugins that do some of these things, but this is just all I wanted. Make the thumbnail bigger so I can see everything in it, and show me the alt text so that if I wanted to go back to my media library. So our website will look to build this out, but this is my my tip of the month.
Gene had a quick question, Peter, about the suggestion form. What form plugin are you using for that?
Fluent Forms.
Fluent Forms, okay.
Yeah, and so Fluent Forms has a premium, but their free version that is in the repository is quite robust for these types of things, right? So the premiums add all kinds of additional form functionality. We'll probably have another form plugin presentation at some point in the future, but yeah, I like Fluent Forms.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. That's really nice. Great job on this, Peter. And you got all the links there to our socials and such.
Yep, the links to the socials are there. As we build out other sections and decide, what makes sense to do, we'll just kind of keep building it out.
Perfect. All right, awesome. So let's jump to the agenda for tonight. 1 second here. All right, so like I said, our topic is exploring the power of WordPress media blocks. So we'll do some quick introductions of who I am and who Peter is if you're here for the first time. Then we'll talk a little bit about background of why are we doing this series. So this is really part of an ongoing series that we're hopefully going to continue on to the next year. So we'll talk about the reasoning behind that. So I'm going to start by doing the cover and media text blocks. I'm trying to spend like 15 minutes. I'll try to keep myself to that for those two. And then we'll jump to the image and gallery blocks. Peter will cover those. And then I'll wrap it up with file, audio, and video blocks. Also try to keep that to around 15 minutes or so. Like I said, we're trying to keep this to 1 hour, and then we'll have plenty of time afterwards for Q&A and anything else that people want to discuss. So let's see, is our next button? There we go. So I'm Ray. I'm one of the Hartford WordPress co-organizers. Been in the IT field for 25 plus. Got to update the number. It's grown for a while, a long time. I was a developer / software architect for some large corporations for a good part of my career. I've been using WordPress at least 7+ years. Again, I'm going to update these things next year. I have my own business. I'm married, no kids, live in Newington, Connecticut, and I am a geek. Peter.
I'm Peter Ingersoll. I've worked on the web kind of from the beginning, got involved in WordPress. Yeah, that's got to be updated. It's well over 10 years now at this point. I'm self-employed. I'm married. I have 2 adult children. I live in South Windsor, Connecticut, and I am a self-proclaimed WordPress DIY advocate. A lot of times you'll go into these meetings and there's a developer advocate, but I think being an advocate for the folks who are non-coders is a pretty good thing to do.
Absolutely. So again, to kind of set some context here briefly around, this, if you're joining us for the first time for this series, I would highly suggest go back and watch, especially on our YouTube channel, that's where you can find them. We did a 2-part deep dive previously into the text blocks, where we spent a lot of time going through each of the blocks that comes with the block editor, formerly known as, or still sometimes known as, Gutenberg in WordPress. And the reason for that is we also alluded to in our most recent meetup last month, which was moving away from page builders. Especially we're a couple of years on, we're almost 5, as I talked about too, about the state of the word. We're around 5 years into the first couple of phases of the major redesign, if you will, or refresh of WordPress. And one of the big things that came out of that was the idea of that page builder, or the block editor. So over that time, over the past 5 years, the blocks that come with WordPress free, built into core, have really become much more impressive, and that's much more reliable, have new features to them, and things that you can pretty much build the majority of your pages or posts just using these core blocks. So in our previous series, we covered the text blocks. So those are probably the ones you're going to encounter the most. But what we wanted to do in this series is continue to go through all the core blocks in groupings and do a deep dive into them. So that's where today we're going to focus on the media blocks, which are probably also one of the more popular set of blocks that you're likely to encounter, even if you're using a page builder. So even if you're using something like, or I'm sorry, if you're using, let's say, Elementor, but you may still have some pages that we're using a block editor. So these are things that you may still encounter, or Cadence. If you're using Cadence blocks, you're still probably highly likely using one of these core blocks. Anything else, Peter, around background worth mentioning?
No, I think that's it. I think, like you said, it's come so far, and the functionality is there. But yeah, these, as you add things like block collections, you can certainly use the core blocks with them. It's not like you're picking one over the other. They can work together. And what's interesting, in some cases, I find that even if I have a block collection that I'm using, and there might be an advanced image block, sometimes it acts almost a little bit differently, where the core block does what I want quicker and easier. So give those core blocks a chance.
Exactly. All right. So with that in mind, like I said, we divided it up. I mean, when you look at it, so we'll show this up since we're doing our demos, but the media blocks themselves, right now there are 7 of them, but they do kind of logically get grouped together even within media blocks. So that's how we're dividing tonight's presentation. So I'm going to first start off with the cover and the media and text blocks, because they're very similar. As I said, Peter will cover the image and gallery ones, and then I'll round it out with the file, audio, and video blocks. So let's talk about the oops. Wait, where did mine go? Oh, maybe I have an old copy of this, Peter. Let me refresh. Sorry. This was being changed on the fly. Oh, there we go.
Got it?
Like Shift F5, refresh. Cover blocks. So what is a cover block? So cover block, just the definition is, it lets you add an image or a video with a text overlay. But a lot of times you probably encounter these. You've seen them on lots and lots of websites. Sometimes they're called hero blocks or call to action sections. I mean, quite often on the home page, maybe that very first section is something that you would probably likely consider a cover block. So these are very common. They're very common sections on a website, but in the past, it was a bit of a pain in the neck to create them from scratch. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit when I do the demo. So in the past, you'd have to worry about, if you wanted the whole image to display, that could be a bit of a pain. You have to put things like spacers in there, etc., just to make images display properly. So the block itself, the cover block, as I'll show you in a second, really has a decent amount of styling and design options right out of the box. So you can do things like change the size of the image very easily, add color overlays, change the height, position of the text. That's another thing too that used to be a bit of a pain. If you wanted, let's say, text centered, or let's say you didn't just want text centered, you want everything in that block centered or moved to the left justified, etc. It's very, very easy now with this cover block. And by default, what you'll see when I add one is it gives you a paragraph block But you're not just limited to that. So you can change that, you know, from a paragraph to a headline. You can add buttons in there, add additional paragraphs, etc. So this block is really a starting point for entire sections. So think about it that way too. If you need a section at some point, we're like, hey, I want a background image, but I want other stuff in it, you may want to consider starting off with a cover block. And from a media standpoint, yes, you can use images, but you're not just limited to images. You can also do video. So you can add a video overlay as well. And I'll show an example of that too. There's not as many styling options when you add a video, but you can still do some basic background thing with a video. And another thing too, we'll look at a little bit later is if this idea, especially I think you'll see this a bit more in the newer themes, is patterns. You know, so the WordPress patterns directory, you search there's quite a few examples that people have already created cover blocks that you can start with. And in fact, when you try to insert a cover block, quite often it'll show you an example and give you some other potential cover block patterns that you can also, you know, use as inspiration. So that's the thing too. You know, you may look at one of these patterns and say, hey, that doesn't meet my needs, but think of it as a starting point. If it does, you know, 75%, then it's better than starting from scratch. So let me jump to my demo site. So cover block, let's look at what these things look like. So I created a few examples of them, just 3 of them, just for time's sake. And again, I'm trying to keep this to like 10 minutes-ish for this one. So what is a cover block? So when you add this thing, there's a couple ways you can add it, just like any other block. You can add it through, you know, again, add it just through the plus symbol on top. You can see it's underneath media blocks. You can click on that. Another way, if you're inside of the content area here, you know, is type in /cover. So that's another way to add one, just if you like using the keyboard instead. But what's in this thing? So let's look at this first one. This is probably a good example. So in this example, when I added the cover block, one of the first things I was able to choose is my media. So you can either upload a file, you know, upload a JPEG or PNG, a media file. You can select something from your media library that you already have, or a video. We'll look at videos last. So when you add an image, in this case, one of the things you already have the option to do is, as I said, things like overlays. So for example, you can apply different types of filters. These filters are really dictated by your theme. So again, depending what theme you're using, I happen to be using the new 2024 theme. So these are the different filter options that are part of that. So again, you can mess around with these. You can actually change whatever you want, or just remove the filter entirely. So that's a simple, quick thing built right into the control itself. Some other things too, from an image standpoint. One great thing is, you know, besides you can change you can change the style. I can change the opacity of this. So if I want it darker to make the text stand out a bit more, you know, that's a slider in there. You can also, as I said, change the size of typography. So this will apply to all the text that's contained inside of this cover. And you can also mess around with padding, margin, etc. But real nice thing too is that if you can see, my cursor now has changed once I got to the bottom of this. So I can actually drag and adjust the size, and you can see it's telling me the pixels. So here's the pixel size it's going to become. So very easy, very visual, very intuitive, very page builder like one might say. That's what these blocks are turning into in some sense. So that, and just again, to kind of look under the cover, there's no magic to this. I think that's the great thing about these blocks is, so what is a cover block? It's basically a grouping of other things. Again, at some point when we go into more of the structure blocks, we'll talk about groups and rows and all that. But, you know, under the covers, that's really what this is. It's like a div, you know, behind the scenes. But this contains, you know, my text. I can add, like I've added this. I've converted this one. So when you first add a cover block, it just gives you a single paragraph. You can remove that. You can just have the image if you want. You know, you can add additional paragraphs. You can do, I'll show you the example below, add a button, etc. So you have a lot of flexibility and control. And again, because it's a group, now I can move things around. I don't have an example of it here, but if I wanted to do even more styling, I can throw these things together into another group. And then I can control padding even at a more granular level than, the entire block itself. So there's a lot of additional things you can do, which again, I just won't have time to show today. So this is a basic one. This is a really simple, think about this cover block with image, and to show you kind of what this looks like. Let me update this. Okay, good. Updates are quick. Oh, this is my site. Sorry. Updates are quick. So in this case, I did a wide width cover block. And what this look like on mobile, I'll show you a real quick example. So on mobile, it's still, it's wide width. It's not full width. The example below is a full width. So what's the difference here? It's very easy to change. So on this second cover block, back up here, my alignment, I chose full width instead. And one other thing I did on this one is you have an option to set a fixed background. So in this case, the image remains fixed, parallax, parallax background. And I also said, in this case, I want the width, excuse me, I want the width of this to be, to fill the entire content. So, so in that case, now when I look at this example here, let me refresh again. You can see it's parallax. It's, it looks like it's scrolling, but the image is staying fixed. And the other thing I did too is I adjusted the placement of the text. So that's another, in the past, this would be a pain. You'd have to either know some CSS or, do some additional finagling with padding, etc. It never would come out quite right. But what's great is in the cover block, all you have to do is click on this. It kind of looks like a grid, and I can change the position of the contents. So I can say, I want it to be top, I want it to be centered, I want it to be left, center left, etc., etc. Just with a click of a button. That's I know some page builders that don't give you really like this easy or this good of a user experience just to center things nicely. So that's,
yeah, Ray, I agree that that's like one of those things where you go, well, the core block just did this nice and simply. That's a great feature, and I hope that shows up in more places.
Exactly. And if there's questions, Peter, while I'm going through this too, feel free to interrupt me with anything that comes up.
You actually just demoed one of the questions, the question that we had, which was the fixed.
Yes. And then I'll show you just real quick the last one here. It's the cover block with a video background. Excuse me. So when I added a video, you do have, it's kind of strange. It didn't seem to give me, and again, I'll have to dig into this a bit more. I apologize, I don't have the time to do that, but it seems like by default, it turned the video into looping. I'll have to look at my source video file and see if my source video is set that way. But when I cover the video block a little bit later, you'll see the normal video block gives you a lot more controls over how you want videos to display. But when you add it as a cover, it just seems like it defaults to just looping. But again, this may be an effect that you want. And one last thing on the cover blocks too is that for all of these, whether it's a video or it's media, the other nice thing too is the focal point picker. So for example, in this one, because this is the non-fixed, on the non-fixed one, you can choose, let's say I want to emphasize the sky more. I want to emphasize this. Just, again, you drag and drop it and then let it go. And it's as easy as that. So cover block, very useful. Again, think about when you're building a page or you look at other sites and you see that, oh, someone created a full width section. You see it all the time, especially like I said, that hero or first section of many home pages. The cover block is something that's very easy to use to do that. And one last thing is, as I said, the patterns. So when you try to add a cover block, let's see, do one here. It's underneath patterns, sorry. Underneath patterns, if you look at some of these available patterns, some of these are cover blocks. We'll have time maybe later in our additional Q&A time or extra time, but that's basically what these are. They're pre-made cover blocks that somebody added additional styling to. So again, you can grab a cover block that's already made as a starting point. So that's the cover block. The next one I'm going to talk about briefly, much more briefly than cover blocks, is the media and text block. It's very similar, I would say, to a cover block. So they allow you to place an image or video, again, just like a cover block. But the difference is this is side by side with the text, as opposed to being the background and overlay. But a lot of the properties, that's why I won't spend as much time on it. A lot of the properties are the same as what I just showed you with the cover block. By default, the container it gives you is 50-50, so 50% your image or your video on one side and 50% your text on the other side. But you can change that very easily. You can I'll show you later. There's a slider you can drag to switch the sizing, or there's other ways you can do that. You can flip it too. So if you want the image on the left and the right, or let's say a lot of times for variation, you want to have image sometimes on left and then later sometimes on right. You can do that very easily in this block. Some other styling options, I'll demo these kind of quickly, is you can crop the image. So if you have an image that doesn't fit, you can change the styling so it crops to fit the entire column. As I said, you can switch the sides between them. And then mobile is really nice too. So a lot of times people don't know this, or it was difficult a lot of times, even with page builders, to change the stacking behavior on responsive. And I'll show an example of that. So if you think about it here, if you have an image on the left and text on the right, what's going to happen on mobile in general? The image will be on top, the text will be on the bottom. But you can change that here. You can turn off that stacking so that they're side by side. Not always recommended because often the text can be difficult to read that way, but you do have that option to do it. And again, video can be used. I found it didn't seem to behave quite the same way as the cover block, but I'll show you an example of that working though. All right, so let me go to, let me show the media and text block. All right, so here we go. So again, by default, I won't show all the properties of this because it's very similar to the cover block, but by default, again, it's grouped just kind of like a cover block was, except it's called media and text block. So, but by default, think of this as two columns. So here's the image is on the left, and then the text is on the right. So if I go to the block, I can, as you see right now, it's set up by default to be 50-50 width. But here's an example one where I did 60-40, and there's two different ways you can change the ratios here. You can just drag the slider, flip it around, make it whatever you like. Or if you want to be more precise, you can use, you can type it in. So let's say I want 75% for media or 25%, etc. Probably a little too small, but you want to, obviously find something that makes the media and the text look good together. So that's a real handy thing of just changing the size of these. As I said, you can also change which side you want the media to show on. So in this, let me go back to this one again. So let's say I want the image on the right and the text on the left. It's that simple, just clicking back and forth between the two. And then, like I said, I won't show all these things, but you have all the regular styling of, do you want things in here vertically aligned, etc. Do you want this to be full width? And just like the cover block too, you're not limited to just a paragraph. So in this example, I changed the paragraph into a headline. This was the default paragraph, and then I added buttons underneath this too. So again, it behaves very much like a cover block did. And let me, before I show you the video ones, I'll show you what this looks like on responsive. So let me open this up. So from a stacking standpoint, as we said, normally this will stack so that this is on top on a mobile. This will be on top and this will be on the bottom. Let me just show you that. So here by default, this image is on top and that's on bottom. But in this case, I've set it looks a little goofy, so the image size isn't perfect. But in this case, it said don't stack, leave them alone. And if you had these things flipped, then obviously the text would be on the top and the image would be on the bottom. So that's how you would control responsive behavior, again, pretty quickly and easily. So that option, let me show it again, is here, this setting, stack on mobile, on or off. And again, the other one was that crop the image to fill the whole column, so that'll expand it too. Last thing, video, as I promised. So in this particular example, I've added a video. It doesn't play like the cover block, so it's showing me the video controls. So this, for whatever reason, this one's a little bit different. It's not looping the video. And then finally, this is an image that's cropped. So as you can see, the image itself is normally taller than this column size, but because I clicked the crop image to fill entire column, it keeps it so that the text size, I'm sorry, the column that has the text is the one that's dictating the height of this. And final, this media and text block is one that I grabbed from the patterns directory. So as I said, when you're searching for these, sometimes it may not be apparent what this thing is. When you look at it, it's like, oh wait, that's a media and text block. So when I copied this and pasted it in, this was the starting point. And you see all the different styling you can do. In this case, they're using an image with a transparent background. So there's a lot you can do with this block. So that's the media and text block and cover blocks, two very handy blocks. Like I said, I think when you look at a lot of websites these days, especially the homepage, a lot of those sections, that's really what they are. You know, it's a combination of those two and then other stuff in between. So they work really great out of the box, and again, highly recommend checking them out. So Peter, you're up next.
Yeah. And while I share the screen, Sherry had asked the question about, do these work in Cadence? And what you and I will both, I saw you had a slide on the same thing that I had a slide on, which is that themes have some impact on some blocks. So there is a dependency. That said, absolutely, these work. Your core blocks are going to work in every theme. It just may be that you might see some things. We'll talk about some of the details later. You might sometimes things in dimensions might not be there for various reasons. So I think that's
or the filters and all that too. Like I said, that's going to vary based on your theme. So some of that styling.
exactly. So can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So the image block, words and images. That's what the web is mostly all about, or at least initially. And so that image block, you got paragraph, you got images, and all the things that you do. So there's a lot to go over. I've got more slides than I thought I was going to have, but basically what I wanted to do is kind of spell out all the things that you can do through it, and then we can demo parts of it or walk through some of those things, but then using this as a reference, coming back and looking at some of the details we can do. So we'll demo this, but things like the image block, inserting images, you insert images from a media library, you upload to the library, you can link to a URL. The media library, you can add images independent of a post and then load up your media library and then bring things over. I think most everybody who's using WordPress knows that, but that's how, when you bring in that block, that's where you bring in the images to. You can use the block inserter for a quick view of the media library or add directly from Openverse, and I'll show that, which is, that's one of those little things that's there right in front of you, but I'm not sure if everybody knows to go give that a shot and go, oh, there's my media library and the most images that I've recently added, or again going out to Openverse. And then just a quick thing, and depending on licensing, Openverse images may be downloaded, or in some cases you're linking to, so it's either into your media library or the URL to wherever this free images, but there's some with the licensing in case you need to pull that and the way attributions work. But it is a resource, and if you want to find attribution free images, we mention this every once in a while, wordpress.org/photos, which I don't think they've yet added a link to. It's sort of in beta, but it's in beta for quite a long time now. And you can grab any images there. You can submit images, or you can pull anything there pretty much kind of for free. So if I go to then the next slide, so then we'll walk through the toolbar settings. Some of this, and what's good is there's duplication, right? So under cover blocks, we'll see the same thing. So we don't necessarily need to go over all the details, but there is duotone filter. The alignment, same thing, wide, full, left, right, center, but with images, you've got the way content can wrap around things when you align things left or right. Caption is an option. If the caption is already in your image in the library, that'll bring up automatically. You can decide whether you want to show it or not. You can style the caption, put links in it, things like that. There's an option for a link, which would link the entire image to a URL, or you can select it to link to the media file. And we'll get into one specific reason why you might want to do that. There is cropping, and this is kind of interesting. You can crop, change the size, zoom, select area, but in the toolbar, it does it in a kind of, not a destructive way, but creates it as a new image. So you'll now have a new cropped image of that. I'll show you that. Adding text over images, and we'll talk about transformations that transform when you select that, it basically transforms you into a cover block. And then in that toolbar, you'll see a replace. So you can use different images, but retain most of the settings that you've already set up. So image block settings, when you get now into the right panel, alt text, that's for accessibility. Describe that image. If it's decorative, you don't necessarily need to describe it. You can leave it blank. WordPress is now smart enough to have that alt text be intentionally blank, so screen readers won't read it on decorative. But for any kind of image, you want to describe what's in the image, concisely, but so that everybody can get the same idea, whether they're sighted or not, as to what that image is. Aspect ratio basically sets similar to what Ray just showed with the cover block. Wide, square, tall, things like that. We'll show some of that. And then as part of that, there is a scale whether you're filling the space of this wide, tall, or you're fitting your image inside it. Most of us are going to want to, the reason we would select a ratio is to fill that box, as opposed to making something squish inside. That kind of seems pointless to me, but there's always a reason for an option. There's a width and height setting. Again, works very similar to the cover block. Resolution you can choose, and we're not going to get too much unless at the end, if people are more interested in looking into things like how the media library works, uploading files, and settings that you set in WordPress that says how many, you create thumbnails that have your full size image, a large image, a medium image of a certain size. When you're placing an image, you select which ones of those that you would want to show. And the reason that you would select is, like, say you just have something in a very small area. You don't need the giant image when you're only showing, a 300 pixel wide image on the screen. So you can pick that medium size that now makes your page run faster, because you're not loading always your largest images. Expand on click. This is a new feature in 6.4. It's a light box. It's kind of, we'll talk about specifics about lightbox, but it's kind of a pseudo lightbox in my opinion, that it opens that up full screen. Click the X, click the side, and then it'll go back down, but at least you can zoom in basically on images now part of core. Then we'll get into styles, which is rounded, a quick way to add rounded corners, filters, the duotone filter. I'm thinking that maybe there's some thoughts of adding other filters in there, but right now under filters is just duotone, which you also have in the main toolbar. The aspect ratio, this is the non-destructive way of changing the height and width as they're displayed as the image displays. I'm not sure if did I repeat that from the previous? Probably. Border, you can set a border color, width, even specific size that you want your border to apply. So you can add a box around images, and then that link or unlinked border. And I'm not sure everybody would know that there are a lot of settings where, it's like all the sides are the same. No, I want my top and bottom to be different. Well, you can unlink those, so you can set each one of those separately. Similarly for the radius, which is on your rounded corners, how large are those rounded corners? And again, is it all four corners, or do you want to do them separately? And there may be some design reasons why you want to just, round one corner, for an effect. Another thing to always keep in mind, and the image block is a good example of where there's a lot of this, which is the image block transformation. That is the ability to turn the image block into something else. So right on with every block, on the left side of the toolbar, there's a section where you can go, I want to turn this into something else. You can, with one click, turn it into a cover block, what Ray just showed. You can put it into basically a column within, a series of columns with one click. You can turn it into a gallery. If you grab multiple images, you can transfer all those into a gallery, including all of those images. A file changes the link. Instead of seeing the image, you get a link to download it. Ray will talk about those types of things later. Group is always there as something that you can group a bunch of blocks together. And then, yeah, similar to the cover block, you can transform it to a media and text block. So these are things you can transform. So the hint here is when you're, as part of your workflow, when you're bringing your text in, you may just use paragraphs and bring in the images and then start working with how you want to look at it. You can bring in all your images and say, you know what, I have all these images, but I now want to turn them into a gallery, or I want to make, this is really just this is going to be a cover, but you know, instead of going through each block as is, you might want to bring in your content if that works for you. This is the beauty of WordPress. A lot of ways to do that same type of thing, but you can definitely add those images and then do some of the transforming. Why don't we go right into showing that some of these things before I get into the gallery block. Let me pull up, and I've got a blank page because the images kind of start right from the, you know, I've got a blank area here. I'm going to put something in, and so the first thing I'm going to show you the different ways you can insert. So you insert an image, the easiest way, right? So there's your add a block, select image, and then you can either upload fresh. You can upload multiple at the same time. If you're doing the image, then you're picking the one that you want. You can go to the media library. Well, you know, this is something that a lot of folks might do. So let's say I want this seagull. I'm going to select that. So now I have that image in here. So we're working on that. Say I wanted to do another image here. I wanted to show this where you could go to the inserter. And there's two ways to go to the block inserter. One is when you're here and then you go browse all. What it'll do is the equivalent of going to your top left where you're toggling that block inserter. It basically does the same thing. So that opens the block inserter. And now next to blocks, patterns, this is where you have media. And media, when you click on that, if you go images, you're going to get this little stacked view of what's in your media media library. So this is kind of a handy way to go, you know, I just want to get there. So it's a quick way of seeing what you want, bringing it in there. But what you can also do, say I go to, again, do this, I want to, or maybe I'm just going to go to the inserter here. And now I'm going to click image. And if you don't know this, one of the things you can do is start typing and you'll get your little subset. So I go to image. Oh, I was showing another version of the inserter, sorry. So let me go to the insert and I go back to media. And then you can go, this is where you can go to Openverse. So if I go to Openverse, it is now going to what used to be a Creative Commons, which are images in a gigantic library that are licensed in different ways. But in Openverse, they're all free. Some not necessarily for commercial. Some you don't have to give attribution. Some you do. Attributions are like who took that image, maybe a link to the source. Now, say I wanted here to find, I don't know, I'll just do a quick search on dog, and here dog images, and say I like that image, and I can bring that in, and in that case, that one downloaded right to it's actually in my library now, because that process was go get that free image, bring it over, and the attribution is included already in your caption. So this is kind of the fair way to do this. Can you delete that? Yes. Should you know? When it comes to, like, this is a Creative Commons license 1.0, there's an explanation there. But this is a nice thing to know where you can get images from. Let me come here. I don't need this block. I highlight the block. I'm going to delete that. But another thing to notice, and I'm not sure, I'll do it where I saw it before. Say earlier I did kitten. I just want you to be aware of this. Say I wanted, I think this was one. I click this. This is where you get that the notice that says you're not taking the image, you are linking to the image. So it's the same thing as when you go to add an image. If you picked a URL, in this case, it will insert that image, but it's not actually in your library. You now have a URL that goes out to where this is. And the warning is, if they delete it off of the Openverse site for any reason, then that image is not available. This link will no longer work. But this is a neat thing in terms of images that a lot of, I think, people aren't necessarily aware of, that capability to be able to manage images and bring in images from other sources. So now what I want to do is go into some of the things that some of those options. And let me get the toolbar up top. We're showing, here's the transform. So this is where you can transform it to a cover block, and it even gives you a nice little thumbnail or a nice little preview of what it would look like. You know, the raw thumbnail before making any changes that Ray showed is just, you know, text over an image. Columns, it's not really changing the image because it's going to be something in gallery. It's only showing one image. The file will look something like this, where it's now, instead of the image, it's a link to download the file. And then the group. So these are the things that you can transform to. That's what I want to make sure folks are. Duotone, yeah, these are defined by the theme, but you can also create your own. You can change these colors if this is something you want, and different. And I'm also using the 2024 theme. The reason we stayed with a block theme as opposed to a classic theme is because we want to make sure that we have all the core options available to us, which does happen with block themes. And in 2024, there are things like color choices where I could get, depending on what style variation, I might have different colors here. But again, you can always customize them. A lot of times people ask, why would I even want duotone? Well, one option might be because you want to have this kind of artistic style that is consistent with all the images on your site. Maybe you want them all to have a certain, you know, kind of red look or green look or whatever. This allows you to do that. Or maybe just simply a black and white image, and you want all your images to be black and white so they match. So that's the reason to use a duotone filter. The align is the same type of thing: full width, wide width, and you'll what that wide width is also, again, defined by themes. None. Now, what's important with images is when you have the align left and align right, where in your body of text, and I'll show the size, but it has the same the same handles here for changing the size. If you see this size changes over here, I'm changing the width, so the width is changing. The height is set to auto, so that's where it keeps the ratio that we want. And then if I happen to have, say I inserted copy here, that now, depending on the positioning, if this was above, now that is aligned left, aligned right. That's where the alignment, when an image is smaller than the width of your content, as it interacts with other elements on the page. It's not unique to images, but images where we mostly see that, where you have, you know, whole body of text and, you know, image on the left, image on the right as you're scrolling down. That's all done through your align options. If I do none, then it's just, again, right below. Right in line with the content, but you can work through those. The caption is just this little button, and you can add the caption, you know, seagull, if that's what you wanted, or whatever that caption might be. But that's where you do it. And then again, this is, you do have a rudimentary text editor, bold, italic, and you can put links in. The link, this is where you would link to an entire link the entire image to a website, a URL, or under the link, under links, you can also choose to go to an attachment page, or, and I'll get to that in a second. Let me take that out, or the media file. Attachment page you don't use. It's kind of useless. It's actually gone away in 6.4. But if you have images already in your library, you still have what's called an attachment page. Nobody's used those for kind of ever. Ray, I don't know if you've ever used an attachment page, but that has been yanked out of WordPress in 6.4.
I see them come up as errors sometimes when people do like a Google crawl. It's like you have these orphan pages out there, and that's the attachment pages.
Yeah, exactly. You might use a SEO plugin to make sure that your attachment pages are not indexed. So now, thank goodness, going forward, they won't be created. There are no attachment pages, which I think is important. Let me get this back to auto to fill now under. This is the interesting cropping that I'm not sure folks have tried yet, which is when you click crop, now what you can do, you kind of, it opens up this little these extra bits. So crop turned into a magnifying glass, an aspect ratio size, and you can even rotate it. You know, I guess I can make my seagull dive bomb. So I rotated it. And then, oops, I don't want to rotate them anymore. Let me go back. Actually, I can just cancel that. That's one way to do it. Go to crop. But then what you can also do is you can zoom, right? And you can also move around. It's literally allowing you to, you know, make this new image. And now if I apply it, what's interesting is, and the quickest way to show you is if, say, you wanted to replace that, and I mentioned replace. If I go to the media library, I actually have a new image added to my media library based on that cropping. So that cropping actually creates an image with that, with the size and dimensions that I set in the crop. So that was kind of interesting, an interesting way to on the fly crop and size an image specifically for a particular place. So I thought that was pretty interesting. If I wanted to say I wanted to actually go back to my main image, I could just, this is where you select and replace that image. And this add text over images turns it into a cover block. That's the same thing as, and if you don't know the redo, undo kind of thing, box here, you can also hit Control Z to undo something. Yeah, just like you can transform it to a cover, they also added it here. So I guess happens enough where folks would want to, you know, change something to cover block. Let's give everybody a lot of options. So alt text. So now I'm in the options section. Alt text. This is white seagull flying under blue sky. Might be, you know, nice alt text for that to describe what it is. Important for accessibility. Here's where we get into the aspect ratios that are now, again, new to the recent version of WordPress, where you can change this by one click to these various ratios. And what's important to know here is that one, it's that image that is set inside a box of a certain width. It hasn't created a new image like the cropping tool does. But this is where, again, the thing that I'm not sure, say you had it here and then you wanted to contain it. This is the cover contain. Most of us are going to use cover because now we want it to fill out a particular space. Contain, all it does is say, here's my square now, but I want to make sure that I see everything. Kind of no reason for it, in my opinion, but again, there's always a reason for something. But one quick thing to show, and this is something that I hope comes into play in the future, is the same thing, Ray, that you showed in the cover block, which is selecting that focal point. That would be really good. And in certain blocks that you add through plugins, some of them will have that feature where, right, so that instead of it now just kind of picking a certain, you know, kind of actually the focal point is the center. The idea is that you could pick that focal point. And I've got this page here where I was exploring this, where I created this image, this cute little artificially intelligent graphic of these kittens, but I put a grid on it because I was curious about this. So I have this image that is, I think, a 16:9 formatted image. Here's my grid of one. But now if you say you did square, you could see where what you're cutting off. You're cutting off the sides. Standard cuts a little bit. That's a 4:3 ratio. Portrait is a 3:4, now taller. So you can see you're going to, in effect, crop your images depending on what you pick. So what I'm hoping is that we'll see a focal point that, say I wanted the tall guy here to make sure that he's always shown. Oh, you know, here he's cut off, but maybe, you know, change the focal point. Just to be aware of when you're setting these, you're trying it, you go, oh, my image is off. That's where you might actually just want to either go and crop that image using the cropping tool or in whatever image editing tool you might want to prefer. So that's just something to be aware of the way the ratio is. Just as I showed before, the handles here for size, but also you've got the ability to change the width or height here.
Hey, Peter, real quick on the focal point thing,
Yeah,
just
please.
thinking out loud here too. So I wonder if you, again, maybe it's a hack, but the way you could do that, as you said, is if you transform it, if you transform it into a cover block,
Yes.
and you don't need any text.
Yes, right.
Block, then you could actually do, you can change the focal point.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that later, but I'll tell you,
Yeah.
that's a great example of once you know how things work, you could do just that. You create a cover block, you don't put an overlay on it, you don't put any text. Now you can do exactly what you described. So yeah, that is a good hack, if you call it. The resolution that we're picking, again, if I just used like the thumbnail, well, say I wanted the thumbnail now to fill out a particular size. Now I'm getting my blurry image because the thumbnail is much smaller than the space I'm trying to fill. So this is where you would potentially want to use, my medium filling that space. That isn't quite there, but my large size is now going to be the higher resolution that will fit in that box properly. So sometimes folks will say, why are my images blurry when the original isn't? Well, it could be the resolution that you've placed it in. So expand on click. We'll quickly do this. I'm going to update it. I'm going to turn that on. And then if I go to view this, the expand on click is when an image, this is the new lightbox feature, where now if I click that, it actually has opened this up into the page. Probably a bad choice the way I did it, because it looks like it almost made it smaller. But if I had just a thumbnail, for example, it would now show me the full image. Not a lot of options in core. A lot of times we're looking at, say, a gray background or a transparent background. Right now in WordPress, we don't have a lot of options there, and we have to do this per image individually. So even when we get into a gallery, that per image is something to keep in mind. And it's not like I can move between images right now in this light box, but that is this choice of expand on click. So expand on click, the lightbox feature, if you will. Real quick, we'll go into the styles. So, well, let me get back to my original image. Under styles, I can go to a quick, rounded image, rounded corners. There's that darn duotone filter again. Make sure it's always there, because I think they may be adding more filters here. Under border, I'm going to put under default. This is where, say I wanted a gray border, and that's a little wide, but say I wanted it 28 pixels wide. And this is that link unlink thing in your toolbar, where you can decide that while they're linked, they're all going to be 28. But if I unlink them, now I can control each one, excuse me, individually. So that's a neat option if you want to have a little bit more artistic style over your blocks. The other,
Peter, another just a comment that came up, and you can take a sip of water during the comment. So Gene and Tracy both had comments about some of the image properties that you're showing, like the expand on click. They both said something about using global styles. You can set those so that apply to all images. So
exactly, and I haven't touched on that. And that's a great example of, in some themes, they have the functionality to be able to say, apply this as my default style. So all new blocks would have that. In block themes, you have the ability to set a global style. That's probably something we'll revisit, with the idea being that once you get something looking the way you like it, you can say, I want to make sure that all my images are using the same styling. So there is a way of setting global styles, both in classic themes and in block themes. Block themes in theme JSON, for example, which is a file behind that really does a lot of controlling. A lot of folks are very, developers who know CSS, we've talked about, cascading style sheets over time. You could apply, give this a class, just like every block, by the way. If you go under its settings, under advanced, I didn't show this, but this is where you can decide that, you know, if you want to set it as a link, but where you can set different classes. You might want to have, you know, gray border class or something to that effect, and then set that in the CSS file. Lots of ways to do that. We'll probably cover that in the future. So real quick here, the other thing is whether you have a border or not, you can also, you know, you can control the radius using this radius tool. Rounded, it's kind of similar, but now this kind of overrides. Rounded is just a quick radius. Again, probably that radius is probably set in global in theme JSON. I haven't looked into that, but it does change the radius of the border as well as the image. So that is the image block. Oh, here's another thing, by the way, that's new to WordPress 6.4.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah, the preview. That's neat. Yeah.
This little thumbnail, but at least it gives you an idea. Just like, you know, renaming blocks. We didn't mention that, where you could take a group block, for example, give it a name. There's a number of blocks you can actually apply a name to. But yeah, this is a little. If I go in here, there's in that box, it's a little seagull on a blue background, but at least kind of gives you an idea of what this is. Do you mind if we come back, if you cover your parts and then come back?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
let's come back to the
take a breath. So yeah, we'll jump back to me. Yeah, that little preview thing, it's neat. I stumbled upon that too. I was like, oh, this is cool, especially because just like you, I use the list view a lot. To me, it's a great way to navigate my page. So yeah, I like that feature.
Yep.
All right, so let me go. Yeah, these won't take too long. So I'm going to cover the, let's see, probably file block is probably the most interesting one. So I'll spend 10 minutes with that at the most, and the other two probably 5 minutes or so or less. So what's a file block? Again, as the name implies, it allows you to add a link to a downloadable file on your site. So what can you link to? You can link to images, documents, videos, almost anything. Talk about that you want visitors to be able to download from your site. And again, just like anything, if you tried uploading anything into your media library, there are restrictions. You know, obviously there's a restriction on file sizes. If you try to upload something too large, you'll get a warning. File types, there are still certain file types that WordPress by default, or your hosting, well, WordPress by default won't let you upload. There's other plugins you can do to turn on and activate, or you can in code also, you can do things like that and allow certain file types, but just be aware of some limitations there. The neat one I'm going to probably spend a little bit more time on is PDFs. So what's nice is if you're adding a PDF as a file type, it automatically gets converted to a special container, which allows you to have some preview and inline viewing on the page. So we'll take a look at that. Again, caveat is may not work on mobile or tablets. There's a file download button. You can also hide that. And just some general best practices around files. So imagine you're clicking on something on a mobile phone. You know, viewing files sometimes is not a great experience. You know, a Word document or something else. So just consider that. There could be better options like, you know, linking to a Google Doc or something where somebody could make their own copy, or just you know, access it a little bit better off of like some sort of collaboration tool like that. And lastly, if your purpose of sharing the file was for something like a lead magnet, so for example, you have a PDF file that you've written and you're like, hey, in your blog post, you want people to click and download it, using this file block is probably not the best way to do that. It can work, but what you probably want is something where you capture contact information, you know, kind of like I said, lead magnet type functionality. So there's better tools and plugins to do that. You can do it with a file block, but probably not the ideal one. Let's take a quick look at what a file block looks like. And again, I only have a couple examples in here. So embedded PDF. So what this looks like, and for some reason it doesn't look good here right now. I swear there is a PDF in here. 1 second. Let me look at this as a view. Sorry, 1 second. Where is that? Okay. maybe because my cache in there. So this is what it looks like when I've embedded a PDF. So all I did was again, I won't show you all this, from the block inserter, there's a block called the file block, and you can select, just like we showed for media, the other media ones, you can either take something from your media library, upload something, or link to something. But if the thing that you're uploading or using is a PDF, what WordPress will do is it'll turn it into this. So an embedded PDF viewer. So it's kind of neat. I mean, it gives you, if you've used like the embedded PDF viewers and things like Chrome, etc., it's very similar to that. So there's some more functionality in here. People can zoom, see a table of contents, go through pages, increase zoom, etc., etc. So all this kind of stuff, print. So it's real neat. It gives you a pretty good user experience. Again, it looks better on desktop. That's back to that caveat versus trying to look at this on mobile is not so great. So that's what, in this particular case, this embedded one is, here it is the file. It's a PDF file that I've used. So you can turn that off too. So by default, it shows it embedded. I can also change the size. For some reason, my preview isn't showing this, but as you can see, this size of the preview, I can adjust that, make it bigger or smaller, etc., etc. I can turn that off if I just want it to be like a regular file that I'll show afterwards. And also the download button, you can hide the download button here. So PDFs are probably the more unusual type of file. A different file here I'm showing is just a Word document. So Word documents are safe in terms of a file type to upload. So in this case, what I've done is it's linking to a Word document in my media library. There's a download button here, so I'm showing the download button. I've done some basic styling, like really basic styling. I've added some background color and styled the button a little bit. So what that looks like from the front end here is somebody will see a link and a button. So if I click on this, I'm not going to click because I don't want to download it, but it basically will download it to my desktop. It'll download this Word document, or they can click on this hyperlink. So you probably wouldn't want both. I would think you probably just want one or the other, either hyperlink or the button. So that's a file block in a nutshell. Pretty easy, pretty simple to understand, but it also could be quite useful. If you do want to share something, like for example, I've seen this used. There's a nonprofit I was working with where they had meeting minutes, and it was something that they wanted to keep on their site. They didn't want to put it on a Google Drive, all that kind of stuff. So they had a bunch of these. That's how we shared them as like file blocks. All right, moving on. The next two I'm going to hit really quick. One of them is going to be a little bit funny. So the audio block we'll talk about, I'll show you a little bit of a demo, but I'm not going to do a real demo of playing the audio. As I've learned in the past is once you play audio and you try uploading something to YouTube, you kind of get like, you get the flag, the copyright flags. I just don't want to go through that. So I'll show you the audio stuff, and then I'll try to stop. I won't press play on them. But basically, so what does an audio block do? It allows you to embed a piece of music, a podcast, or other sound file into your page or post. Just like we talked about, we'll see this for the video one as well. These are all very similar. Only certain audio file types are supported. I think it's the documentation I saw actually from WordPress didn't seem entirely complete, but think of the popular ones: MP3, WAV. I found like FLAC is one that maybe some people aren't familiar with. FLAC's the lossless audio. I think the Apple lossless audio, AAC or A4C or whatever it is, I think that one works as well. I think I've tried that once before. Just like all these media things, again, the size of the file may be restricted by your hosting. Again, the file type may be restricted. So kind of like the PDF viewer, and like we'll see for the video, when you add an audio file, there is a pretty basic functional audio player that displays alongside it. You can also add a caption, just like you would an image, and say what the audio file is. So like I said, the player has some kind of basic functionality. And then some other considerations, there's preload options. So if you've been on the web for any long period of time, think back to the wild west of the web back in the early 2000s, early aughts, where you click on a site and music would play and things. It'd be madness. Like you'd say, you turn down your speakers and all that. So don't be that person. You can have files where they automatically play. Don't do that. So by default, the preload option goes to browser default. So however someone has set up their browser, that's what it's going to do. So you can change to auto. Again, don't do this. Don't switch that. And then metadata is another one, just from a saving standpoint. Just downloads the text only. One other drawback, real quick, to auto is, in order to autoplay, it actually has to download the entire audio file first, even if the user doesn't click to play it. So you want to leave that off. And then I'll show you too afterwards for, even though you can do things like, let's say you have a podcast and you're hosting a podcast, you can add it as an audio block, but you probably want to use something, if you're sharing someone else's podcast or your own, you probably want to use an embed block, like the Spotify embed block. So I'll show you that. It looks a lot better and has a much better user experience. So let's take a real quick look here. Audio blocks, leave that because I don't care. So as I said, I'm not going to play any of these, but it's very simple. So here I have audio block. The block itself just doesn't have a lot of properties either. So as I said, there's auto play. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maybe I was confusing. So the preload, auto preload, is the thing that will download it. I'm sorry. The separate setting is auto play. Auto play is the one that you don't want to do, or loop. Obviously, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But when you add this, so in this particular case, I've added an MP3 file, I uploaded it, and this is the player. Again, I won't press play, but it's got basic functionality to play. It's got some volume control, and also you can download. So here's the thing too: people can download these audio files. You can adjust the playback speed. But pretty basic. That's about it. So this one again is a FLAC file, just to show you a little bit different here. This one, I had to find an MP3 file that was hosted someplace that wasn't a podcast. So this is actually linking to another site where there was an MP3 file that I could directly link to. So, but it looks just like if it was on my site. And then finally, to show you this example too. So if you're linking to something, let's say you're writing a blog post about a podcast, you're reviewing podcasts or something, rather than trying to link to it that way, I would say, let's say it's hosted on Spotify, copy the Spotify link, paste that in, you'll get a much nicer user experience. So in this case, you get the Spotify player, which has a lot more control, just looks better, has a thumbnail, that kind of thing. So this is the audio block. Any questions on that, Peter, before I jump to the video block? Anything come up? Yeah. I think it's really specialized use case for this one. It's nice to know it's there. Probably not something most people are going to use quite often, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, and well, you'll talk about it too with audio, video. Sometimes you'll find a plugin that if you're somebody who has a specialized thing, you may find a plugin that does a little bit more what you wanted.
I think the video block might be one that people do use more often, and in fact, like embedding another video, someone else's video. So video block. Let's jump to that again. Very similar to the audio block. The difference here is, so obviously upload or embed a video. Videos also will have a built-in player. So if you're hosting the video, meaning it's uploaded to your media library, there's a basic built-in controller, just like I showed you for the audio one. You can hide the controls too, if you just want the video, if you're auto playing the video for some reason. Don't take power out of people's hands is my general rule of thumb on these kind of things, but you can hide some of the controls. But just like I showed with Spotify, if you're inserting from a URL of a supported block type, so Vimeo, for example, or YouTube, WordPress is smart enough to convert that into a YouTube block rather than a video block. And I'll show an example of that, I think. One neat feature, though, is if you are hosting your own your own video file, like in your media library, you do have the ability to add what's called a text track to it. So a text track is something that's timed to your video, so that there's a special file type for it, if exactly the extension is. But obviously you use it for something like subtitles or captions. So while the media is playing, it's basically a subtitle track. Again, just general rule of thumb for videos is, rather than putting it on your site and making a person click on it and download it and doing streaming from your hosting, consider using YouTube or some other CDN, to host the videos, Vimeo, something like that. It's not only is it going to be better performance for the visitor, but also even for yourself, you're going to get more statistics. You're going to get more information about who's clicking, how far they're viewing the video, all that kind of stuff. So All right, with all that said, let me very, very quickly show you what a video block looks like. Yeah, nothing, I think I only have 2 examples in here. Yeah, so this is one of just some background video, and this I think I can click safely. I forget. I won't, just so I don't run into trouble, although this one probably doesn't matter. But anyway, when I've added it, this one's uploaded directly to the site. So the block itself, oops, sorry. The block itself has a couple of options. In this case, I decided to leave the playback controls on, but you can do things like mute it, have it looped. This one's looping. Again, I won't show the actual video. Autoplay, again, probably not something you necessarily want, and play inline. So here's the difference between these 3. So in this case, this one is an uploaded video. This video is a linked video. So this is on somebody else's site, but I turned on autoplay. I had it looped. This is probably the nightmare thing, but it's just like a particle effect thing. So it's muted, it's playing inline, and I've hidden the playback controls. So that's the difference between these 2. And finally, everyone's favorite, cat playing piano. This one, once you copy the link and you paste it in, as I said, now you're using the YouTube embed block. So when somebody plays this, they get the full, for better or for worse, they get all the YouTube controls around it. And obviously there's YouTube there's tons and tons of YouTube plugins out there too that give you a lot more fine-grained control on how you want this to display. So maybe you don't want the YouTube controls, you don't want the recommended videos, all this stuff comes to YouTube. For that, you're better off using a plugin rather than using the standard YouTube block. So that's video blocks. Like I said, probably another kind of specialized block for people, but good to know that it's there. So I'm gonna hand it back to you now, Peter. Unless any other questions came up in the chat.
Nope.
No, just about Lightbox. Okay, cool. Bring us home with the gallery block.
Yeah, the gallery. I'll share this screen. I will bring this back over. Okay, so you can hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, great. So the gallery block. For years, we've been using gallery plugins to put galleries on our WordPress sites, and then with the block editor came the gallery block, and then the gallery block actually went through a change. It originally was its own block, and then it was basically redone as a container for multiple images, and the images have their own settings. So the gallery block is like a specialized group block that uses images within it. So when you look at a gallery block in the list view, you'll see the gallery block and you'll see all your images underneath. And once you kind of get into that mindset of the images are within a gallery block, then you'll see how much you can, a lot of anything you're doing is just like you would handle image blocks, but that gallery block packages them in a certain way. So images can first be added and then transformed to a gallery, just as that workflow, drop your images in. Adding a gallery block prompts you to upload multiple images, or as many, as one or many that you want, or select from the media library those multiple images. Images can be ordered when first adding, so you can kind of drag and drop them before you place it, and they can be moved within a placed gallery. Once that gallery is there, similar to other blocks, dragging and dropping, looking for that little blue line that shows you where you're going to drop something, the arrows that move things up or down, or in case of a block, left or right. So you'll have that using the blocks within that block, just like you do it in a group block. Same type of thing, gallery specific images. It is it has its own settings. The gallery settings include, very similar to some of these that we've seen, the alignment, especially that full or wide width that you might want to do. You might want to make your gallery go full width on a site that's designed for that. You can have a caption for the entire gallery that explains what those images are within the gallery. You could set the number of columns that you have. Cropping, are the images going to be all the same shape, the same dimensions or not? Same thing, you can, since you have images, you can use that new link to show the image. I'll show you where in the gallery you would do that individually, or why you might want to have everything linked to the media file at the gallery level, and then there's some things that I can show you real quick that might go, oh, okay, I can see where plugins would now enhance this at this point. Image resolution, same thing that we showed with the images. That's all your images, are they going to use the medium, the large, the full size? And another meetup, and probably somewhere in our history, we showed where you could actually in your settings set what your thumbnails sizes would be. But setting your image resolution for efficiency is something you might want to pay attention to. You can set up a background color for your image gallery, again, just like you might do with some, like a group block, for example. Your dimensions of spacing between those images, padding margins, gives you a little kind of control over how far apart your images are from the edge, that type of thing. The gallery block light box, again, this idea, and this is where a lot of people are used to the plugins giving you that light box feature. And I just want to make sure we're kind of calling it out with, now that we have that expand on click, it's per image, and in the core gallery with core images, you have to set those individually. And again, you can certainly do that, but they also work independently to each other. So if the galleries are set to link images to the media file, this is where we can use a plugin, and I'll give you an example of a very light Lightbox plugin that works very nicely with the core gallery block, and we'll get into that. And then this Lightbox is new to this last version of WordPress. I'm sure, just like many of the things that we're showing now, there'll be further enhancements to get closer to what many people are expecting when you're looking at a gallery with a Lightbox feature. We'll get into this point in a minute. This is something that Ray and I both wanted to make sure that we were covering. So let me go into my little demo here. And the first thing I want to do is just show this idea that if you have a number of images already on your page, you can go through transform and transform them into a gallery. And in this gallery, it's just 3 images wide, and you can see how these are just the individual images. And in fact, my seagull image, where I set this not particularly attractive border, it's keeping that design, because that's done at the image level. So in your list view, you can see you have gallery, and then you have the images within it. And this is, you can reorder them by dragging and dropping here. But what you can also do is, say you have an image, you can move it using your arrows here, just like in the regular block editor, you can move things up and down using those things. But these controls here are image block controls at the gallery level. And to remind you, if I'm at image, then I have a little block here that is in the order of your blocks and what's inside what. It says this image block is inside this gallery, so you can select the gallery, and the gallery is now where you're getting gallery specific options here. But I showed you how to add a gallery by grabbing a number of images that you already have and then converting them into a gallery. Let's just go add a gallery right from the get-go. So I'm going to hit I'll go gallery. And then I am going to go to my media library, and this is where I'm going to select, just a number of images. You can see that a lot of them are being clicked. I'll grab a whole bunch, and you can see the check marks. I can create that new gallery. And when you're first adding a gallery, this method, you can decide, I want, maybe I want to spread my images apart a little bit. I want some of, for aesthetic reasons, I might want to change it, so that this is where we can where we can kind of have a level of control through the editing when you're first adding it. We can also add more images to add to gallery. Let's stick with these. We'll insert that gallery, and now we have this design here that brings these images over And I can't remember, let me try one other thing now that I'm seeing it in that layout. And this is, again, something that as I'll just pick a bunch again. Let me start here. I'm sorry. I'm checking something live because I missed something from before, partly because of this way the screen was working. If I go to gallery, Ray, if you don't mind, do you remember if I go where it's giving me the preview of what the gallery is going to look like?
Was it when you're at the main gallery, when you have the gallery thing, you need to click on the gallery itself. You're on an image right now.
Yeah. So the preview, what I was looking for was I noticed out of the corner of my eye, and I don't use galleries too much from core because they've only recently become useful to me. I thought I saw, how you have the little preview of what you're going to add. Because what I'm kind of curious about is the aspect ratios of some of these things. But we'll experiment, see how it's what it's doing kind of auto magically is saying, okay, you've got a number, say right now, let's go to the gallery settings, click the gallery. And you can set your columns, for example, the number of images that you want to show to 3, to 2. Well, I'm on 3, I've got this one left over. So it's filling out the space with that one. So this is one aspect of one way that you can kind of go, all right, I've got 4, 4, 4. Now I got 2 left over. So that's a nice way that those format. So that is a way that those work. But if you notice, these images are cropped. If I uncrop them, you kind of get this look. So now I can see all of my images, but I'm seeing now all of them. I mean, I'm seeing the original ratio, and they don't necessarily look great together. So you want to kind of keep that in mind with the aspect ratio you have. Some gallery plugins might offer something called like a masonry format, which works these images with different aspect ratios, kind of like puzzle pieces or something, where they fit a little bit better. So very often you'll want to go to that full to the cropped image so that things fill out nicely, if you will. So this idea of the spacing, for example, or the settings here, we've got if I want to link to the media file, this is another thing I find interesting. Linking to the media file changes the aspect ratio back to this non-cropped version, at least in the preview. Let's see. That's another thing you'll sometimes find with some of these, and I think you saw this with the PDF file. Like what's working on the front and the back don't always immediately correspond. It's a little interesting. Plus, I didn't go to the preview. I went to show the page. All right, so let me go back here to edit the post. And yeah, see how on the back end in the preview, but when I click on each one of these, now I said click to the media file. So now it's opening that full media file. This is not the lightbox feature. This is actually, if you see the URL, this is going to the image itself. So that's where the link to the media works. And I'm going to show you why you might want to use that if we have time at the end. But that's a little quirk where when the preview doesn't work kind of the way you want it to. So I'm going to go back to the gallery, and just because I want to look at it nicely, I'm going to go to, sorry, not attachment page. I'm going to go to none. Makes that look. So that's, again, now I'm looking at this media. This is an image within the media. I can control all of these images separately. Artistic style, this is one example where if I grab this image and I went over to styles and I went to radius and I unlink them and I pick the bottom right radius and I change that to no, that's the border. If I change this to 24, that might, 48, you can see I'm only round. I got square, a square edge, and now that's my rounded. That might be an area that you would want to do this. Keep in mind on mobile, it might lay out a little bit differently. You might not see all these images, but this is where the advantage of being able to control each image within the gallery it can be helpful. Let me go to the full gallery again. Again, the number of columns. I can set a background color. And this is where you could see now when I go into block spacing, these are the dimensions. I can change the block spacing here. So this is on the height, the amount of space in between the blocks top to bottom and left to right. Now, say you wanted all your images next to each other, you can certainly do that. Or you want to minimize the amount of space between things, you can choose. They have the 1, 2, 3 kind of size, medium, large, that type of thing. But what you might also want to do is, okay, but this looks a little funny because now my edges are weird. And then in here, what you can do is, and this is something that's hidden in a lot of the blocks where you have dimensions. Sorry, you have the dimensions, but it might not be showing you things like the padding. I just turned that on, and the margin, and I just turned that on. So now in my block styles, now I can see not only the block spacing, but now I can see the padding. And maybe on the padding, I want to add left and right padding to kind of match. See, so now so the space between the images, and then this is the padding within that gallery. Little confusing, but using those tools together gives you some capabilities there in terms of how you might want to, use the background with your gallery. So let me see, did I miss anything from what I wanted to go through? Cropping. I think I covered everything that I had mentioned, right? Do I have?
No, I was going to say, like, my opinion on I've used a gallery block a few times, but it is basic. That's the thing. It's good for a quick and dirty layout.
Yeah.
But if you want something fancier, like you said, you want masonry or something like that, it's, like Cadence had, I think the Cadence gallery block gives you a lot more styling options to it, but
Absolutely
it works, and again, as you said too, the other thing to consider is that these gallery things look great on desktop. When you go to mobile,
Yep.
everything changes anyway. Everything stacks. So
I know we went long like usual.
there's always some.
Can I jump to one quick thing that people might want to do?
And I unmuted everyone too, so that after, as Peter's going, if people have questions, or feel free to put in the chat as well too if you have anything. But after this, we'll just open it up to questions about anything we covered tonight or anything that you may want to discuss in our remaining time.
So real quick, here's this gallery that I created with this, again, not particularly attractive gray background. Now I'm going to go back to that gallery, and I'm going to say link to media file. Does this wonky thing in the back? Not quite sure why. If I go back to the page on the front end, the post on the front end, you can see now it's going to link to things, like I said, to that media file. I already showed that. But what I'm going to do is I've got this plugin called Lightbox for Gallery and Image Block. I'll include, there is a link actually in the presentation that we'll make sure to link to. This is a very nice, lightweight plugin. I've activated it. Let me come back to this page. I'm going to refresh it, and hopefully, if it activated enough times, now I'm in a Lightbox that we're kind of used to, where now I can kind of look at all the images within that gallery. So basically, what this is doing is it's saying, okay, as long as you have said an image, just the image block, or an image within a gallery, if you're including a link to media and you have this nice small plugin activated, you will now have an interactive lightbox like this, where it'll bring up the image within that kind of grade thing. You can go back and forth between images. I clicked off into the arrow, and now I'm back to the page again. This is the light box as we expect. Close it. Now I'm back on my page. So this little plugin called Lightbox for Gallery and Image Block, and there's probably a few others. I like this one. This is what it looks like in the well, I'll get the link. It doesn't have the header image, but it's very simple, and it's a neat way to just use core blocks and say, but I want to have that light box. I've got a lot of images of my, our gardening blog folks, maybe they've got a bunch of images that they want to show, and they want to just kind of say, you can go to our, here's it, all of these images from the, our latest garden adventures. We put them in a gallery. We tell that the gallery link to the media file, add this little thing, and now you've got this nice little lightbox feature where somebody can look at the close-ups of each image and move between them. So I thought that was a neat little thing to add.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have a wrap. We didn't really have a wrap up. So I mean, just the overall theme to this is, and just like we've been covering all the other core blocks, is, for many situations, these media blocks are enough. You want to display an image, it's enough. Or the cover block, I think a lot of people aren't familiar with that, and kind of how powerful that is. Or as Peter showed too, just the ability to transform things and play around with different design ideas. I forgot to show too, the cover block, you can transform that into a media and text block, so you can play around with designs to see what looks better for any given section. So spend some time with them. I think that's the thing I was surprised about, that, and I enjoy about putting these presentations together, is they keep changing. There's definitely a lot of new features being added. But the nice thing about using core blocks, again, that's one of the things, you get those new features for free. So maybe you don't need that additional plugin if the core block is doing what you need. So let's see, we have questions in the chat. Gene, do you know if the original PDF is accessible when it is viewed in the embedded PDF doc? Does it retain the accessibility, or are you just viewing an image of the PDF? That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. You're not viewing an image of the PDF. It is, because you can copy and paste the text out of it. And Ray, if you want to grab the screen,
yeah, let me go into it.
But I'm pretty sure, because, and Gene, you're right. The whole topic of accessible PDF files, that's a whole area of expertise and study, and is very important. Especially because PDFs are used so much in education and government and so on. So
in a lot of ways, this to me looks very similar to like the embedded PDF viewer that's in, like I said, like in Chrome or something. It seems like the same thing.
The things that will make it not accessible is, can you get, and this is where there's traps. Can you get to the content?
Oh,
yeah,
with keys
within the viewer. And now that I say it, my guess is
I'm sort of keying around, but yeah, I'm probably breaking the accessibility. I'm keying. Well, it's at least supporting keyboard shortcuts, but yeah,
if you tab, what happens?
I am. Yeah, so I tabbed. It's going between the different sections. So it went from here to there to there.
So you're not reading the content. So what somebody would do is they would go to the download, pull that file.
Yeah.
So no, I guess is the ultimate answer, in that you're viewing it. It's not an image. It's the stuff. It is the PDF, but you can't get to the content within the PDF through the keyboard and screen reader.
Yeah.
Thing. But I'm going to confirm that. And Gene, I see you in so many meetups. I'm sure I can find you and give you a good answer.
And Kelvin also had a question about what happens to our old galleries with the new block themes. New block themes shouldn't affect your old galleries. When you say old galleries, do you mean just galleries that are created using the block, using the gallery block? You can take yourself off mute too if we're kind of at the end here. I'm following you.
So,
old plugins. Oh, so well, those should be okay. So if you created a gallery using a plugin, those will still work fine. Yeah, this won't override anything. So things that we're showing, even like Peter showed, images. So for example, if you're using a different plugin to show images, these won't affect that. So yours will still work if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Yeah, this is a topic that's come up in a few meetups over time, where sometimes there's this confusion that makes you think that, like, if you're using cadence, you have to use cadence blocks and you can't use core blocks, but they work together. They absolutely work together. I mean, you can, if you wanted to, you can load up every block collection that there is. Please don't. It's pick one that works well for you. And we say cadence, but you could use Otter or CoBlocks or Spectra within Cadence, or you can use Cadence
Or
within.
case within 2024 theme. Yeah, we're saying, like, for example, if all you need is a better gallery block than
Yeah.
the one we just showed, you can install the Cadence blocks and use their gallery block, you know.
That's true. And there are gallery blocks, just like you would look at a form, where the form blocks or form plugins can get all kinds of added functionality. There are gallery plugins that offer things like social media links and, again, that light box and downloading within, and a lot of more functionality. If for example, you're a very image based site where you want to have more functionality built in, that's where you would probably look into the plugin world.
Yeah, I think just wrapping up Kelvin's thing about you can't delete the old plugin, right? Because that if you're using a gallery plugin and you deactivate the plugin, then yeah, it's not automatically going to convert that into a gallery block. It'll just say unknown, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It most likely just a bunch of gibberish short code.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, and there's probably no easy way to, like I said, probably there would be no easy way to convert something. But again, recreating it in a core block, depending on if you don't need the functionality that might be in the plugin, it's not hard.
So like I said, if anyone has, anyway, I'll have a couple minutes remaining, but if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, ask them. But while you're thinking of any last questions, I did just want to, again, reemphasize the black. Well, the nice thing is now with WordPress, you can access this directly from inside the block editor. But if you want to just look at these patterns outside of that, you can go to wordpress.org/patterns. As I said, like, the thing that's a little bit confusing is still knowing what you're going to get. So for example, call to action, like I said, some of these are really like, this is the cover block, and this one is probably also a cover block too. But the terms that they're using are probably ones that are outside of WordPress. They're kind of more familiar just in like web design speak. So that may be the thing that throws people a little bit. It's like, oh, where do I find a cover block? Yep.
Hey, Ray, point out the curated option drop down, that, and then community, the difference between that.
Awesome. Yeah.
The
You're right.
curated is more WordPress core, and then this is more community people submit.
Great point. Yep. So there's exactly, just look at the difference too. There's some really nice ones. And that's the thing too, when you look at some packages of themes, oftentimes the thing that they give you is just sections that are pre-built. I mean, this is basically what the patterns are. That's what they're giving you.
That's an important point.
Yep. Have your hand raised.
Yep.
Did you call on me? This is Ted.
Yes.
Thank you. When you were just mentioning about rebuilding, the gallery, how that's pretty easy. If you have a lot of images, I've always wondered why WordPress just, doesn't allow you to put it into folders the way it does on a computer.
Yep.
I use a plugin, Media Folders Library, I think it is. Mm-hmm. Which would probably, you could then create a folder and say all of these images are the ones that are in my gallery, and then delete the gallery, and then you're back there in 10 minutes. But I'm wondering, I'm asking you guys, is there actually something in a core WordPress that I just don't know about that allows you to organize media or any of your uploads?
And I'll say real quick, and then Peter and others can jump in, but I think the media library is one of the woefully underdeveloped areas of WordPress right now. And a lot of people, hopefully, I've heard I've seen some blog posts, I think on WordPress.org, that is a priority to at least get that cleaned up and get that more modern, because I agree with you, it's still very difficult to find anything or manage media. So yeah. Yes, it's coming, or I think it's coming.
Yeah, the next phase of WordPress, which is all about collaboration, and some of the things that are being said is collaboration. Oh, wouldn't it be great that we can all work on, a lot of people can work on a post at the same time, and you can see them all moving at the same. And many of us, especially DIYers, we don't need that, right? But the benefits that we will get is things like reviewing how the media library works. And I have heard some talk looking at, organizing the things much better. A lot of this is basically a folder is the same thing in effect as a tag, or is this the type of hierarchies that we already set in things. And the plugins that exist, the one that you mentioned, Happy Files, is one that I use, and things like that. Basically, all that's doing is overlaying a way of setting categories, call them folders, same difference. And the thing about that is, if you turn them off, no harm, no foul. You just don't have that. You're back to the normal. But I think it's something that's coming. I couldn't begin to tell you how soon. I don't think you're really missing anything. You do have the list view. You do have the image view. So there's two ways of looking at the images, two ways of looking at the the folder approach. I was thinking of something. Let me show something real quick, if I may, too, while I know we're up against the time, but I wanted to show, going back to when I talked about our tooltip being our website, that I had mentioned the snippet area, and in the snippet area, I've got the one I wanted to show in action, which is modifying the media library. Of course, it's not here. Hang on. Date. Oh, no, it is. Sorry, I went to the media library. I meant plugins. My mistake. So under plugins,
plugins, yeah.
This was the media library. You're seeing the one that shows the larger images in the alt text, and I should have just mentioned that while we're there. This is the one that shows your plugins with the date and the highlighted date. But I did, so the same type of thing. So in the library, that other snippet, the larger thumbnail, and as you know, that small one can be pretty hard to see, and the alt text. So there are ways of manipulating the admin side of WordPress to your liking. Code snippet stuff, I know it's beyond a lot of folks who are not into code. That's why this idea of a snippet and just cutting and pasting something into a code snippet plugin, for example, to make it work. But I think we're going to see this idea of, I just want to make sure that this is looking at the thumbnails. This is looking at the list. This is now an enhanced list with these types of things. The way you can sort things. The search works pretty well.
It'd be nice to see like file sizes, basic things. What expects in a file manager here.
Yeah, exactly. And I've worked with, I did try to do that. And there's also plugins or some, but I have a file size thing, so I can sort it by file size, so I can make sure that I don't have anything that is, super gigantic. So there's a lot of things that we're doing through plugins and snippets and stuff like that I think we're going to see over time, but who knows?
Jim has his hand raised.
Jim has his hand up. Yeah.
Go for it, Jim.
Yeah, I used to use a plugin that had the ID in it too, which was very helpful.
Yeah.
But I just want to say a big Thanksgiving shout out to you and Ray, because you guys, we have you to be thankful for the amount of work you guys put in on doing this meetup. I can't thank you enough, and I can't give our appreciation of it enough. You guys do a fabulous job, and thank you very much.
Thank you for attending, and thank you. Peter and I would just be talking to ourselves. We don't. That's the thing. We like this, and our prep meetings sometimes are just us talking to. We're like, we find this topic interesting. I thank all of you for attending these and sticking with us. I see so many regular faces here, so. Yeah, that's a good way to end. We're very thankful for all of your support. Again, we started as a very local Hartford group, and we've expanded beyond that, and we're glad that what we do is of interest to everyone. And it takes a bit of work, but like I said, I like it because we learn from what we do too. So like these media blocks, just a great example. This is kind of a bit selfish, like. I was like, I know the block editor in Gutenberg, but I'm like, I want to dig a bit deeper into that. And this gave us a good opportunity to do that. So we're hoping to do that with the other the other core blocks coming up. We're going to get some really interesting ones when we get to the structure ones. There's a lot of surprises, I think, in those, like group blocks and columns, et cetera, et cetera. So that's more to come.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes.
Be safe and enjoy. And until next time.
Yeah, exactly. So good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Like Peter said, I echo happy Thanksgiving, and we look forward to seeing everyone in December. So take care.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night.